In this lesson we're going to learn how to print a letter using a stencil. Materials you will need: some paper to print on, here we're going to use the stencil patterns from last lesson, 2 thick acrylic paint colours, or even better, some printing ink if you have that at home, dark grey for the shadow and bright bold colour for the letter itself. If you want to add a white highlight line like mine, then a little white paint and a very thin paintbrush will be needed. You will also need a pair of scissors, a clean dry sponge for dabbing paint, and for the stencil of your name initial you'll have been provided with a multi-page PDF document in which you are to select just one letter that you want to print out. How to print out one page only from a PDF document. First, open up your PDF document and scroll down the pages. You'll need to click on the letter that you want to select it. Where it says to and from, you need here to put in the same number so that it won't print out the whole entire document. Be sure to select the correct printer, then click Scale to fit page and the portrait orientation. When cutting out your template, you must cut it out very carefully, making sure not to harm either the background or the foreground of the letter. So you'll need to twist and turn your paper around when you are cutting, make neat straight lines, and also when you get to any part of a letter which includes an area where you have to cut out the centre and you don't want to harm the actual letter itself, one way to get around that would be actually to cut into the letter going straight towards that area. So here we're going towards a little triangle in the center of the A, and I'm just pointing this out, so I'll just snip a straight line, cut out the triangle as you see here, and then I will just place that down. So when you come to print it, you'll just stick it down with perhaps a bit of masking tape in the center, as I'm just about to show you here. Here I've just taken a nub of masking tape and I'm just going to lightly stick that down. Next I'm going to dab some of the dark grey paint over the top of this stencil, and here I'm using a bit of a small sponge, so I actually do drag the paint a little bit, but if you have a larger sponge that would be ideal. And you don't want it too watery, because if your paint is too watery then it's going to seep under the edge of your stencil and make messy lines, so try to keep it as dry as possible. You will need to fill up the whole entire space of your letter, and then once you've done that you can slowly peel it back and let it dry before we go on to the second stage of printing out the red colour or the whatever colour that you're working with. Once your dark grey paint is dry, you're going to reposition the stencil over the top of the letter again, but slightly to the left and a little bit up. And this is because we're trying to make the effect of the shadow. So you'll stick that again down with some masking tape and then dunk your sponge into the red or whatever colour you're working with. Again, not too watery, and we're going to apply that quite liberally over the top. Usually we would work with rollers and printing ink when doing stenciling. However, because we're working with a hybrid learning environment, we're going to just try to work with materials that most students have at home. Therefore, sponge dabbing is what we're working with today. If you find that the layer of paint is not as thick as you'd like it to be, you can always go over it again once that's dried with a second layer of paint. Here you can also see that I did have a splash of red paint, but again we can always go over that later and correct any mistakes, but do be careful and peel back your stencils slowly. To complete my letter and make it stand out, I actually ended up using a very thin line around the border of white acrylic paint. If you're not confident and don't have a steady hand, I wouldn't recommend this. However, if you have a whiteout pen or Tipp-Ex pen at home, then this would work very well and perhaps be easier to control the line.